out, do something, and then come back for the drum circle at 6:30 p.m. That's 6:30 to 8, again, on Wednesday, January 15th. You can just come and be connected. If you have a drum, bring it, or some kind of percussion, I guess. And then, yeah, just let's all collectively raise our energy together in the spirit through the drum circle, 6:30 to 8 p.m. here at Unity on January 15th. There's more, hold on. All right, so the next one is potluck lunch on, January 20th at 10 a.m. So that is the inauguration day, in case anybody's wondering. So it's for 2 hours, and we also are having Discovering Loving Kindness in Politics and Public Policy. Whew, that's a mouthful. So this is presented by Sylvia Clute, which is the Alliance for Unitive Justice, with opening meditation by Katie McCall. Through engaging discussions and hands-on learning, we're going to explore loving kindness can shape a more compassionate and effective public realm. You can sign up again at unityrva.org/events to join us for that one. All right, who wants to join me on the board? Wait a minute. Who wants to join me on the board? Yeah, okay, we'll work on that one. All right, go back and check those New Year's resolutions or intentions. But we do have board applications open. I'm on there at least another year, so that's why I said you can come join me. And we would love you to, though, really discern whether it's yours to do and if you're able to do it. And apply to be on the board. We can share more about what it's about, but we will start the official nominating committee. I think our meeting is this week, actually. So, and I'm on that too. So whether you're raising your hand now or I come and talk to you later, like, your choice, right? Like, you get to choose. No pressure. But anyway, so now we're going to have one that's not up here, some information about A Course in Miracles by Mike Shelton, AKA my dad.
Good morning. For the last 2 years, we've had a study group who's been focusing on A Course in Miracles, and we're going to start our 3rd year today after church. And so I'm issuing a sort of an open invitation to anyone who wants to come and join us. When I was trying to figure a short description of what A Course in Miracles is about and how it might impact you, before I could come up with anything on my own, I found the daily word from last week about acceptance. And it says it better than I think I can say it, so I'm going to read the essay to you. Life circumstances seem easier to accept when things are going well, but acceptance can be more of a challenge to the practice when I'm called to face undesirable or painful situations. Acceptance is possible no matter how dire the circumstance or how seemingly hopeless the situation. When I surrender my concerns to the divine within, I'm living my faith that sometimes the highest and best outcomes may not be what I envisioned or what I hoped for. Choosing acceptance means understanding that my view is limited and likely does not contain the full picture of all the possible outcomes. Trusting in divine order and divine timing and believing that worldly control is only an illusion, I practice acceptance and I know peace. So if you've ever had some interest in A Course in Miracles, or you've ever had some interest in finding the peace that comes with acceptance, come join us today after church. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Let's all stand. We're going to sing this together, actually. We're going to sing the chorus together, and then we're going to let the lovely Miss Katrina sort of lead us in the refrains.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that host all dressed in white, God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelites.
Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
See that band all dressed in white.
The water.
It looks like the band that Moses led.
God's gonna trouble the water.
Come on and wade.
Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Sing it again.
Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, and God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Beautiful.
Katrina, wait a second. You know, something I always have to do.
He's gonna say stuff about me.
I am. I just want, some of you don't know, but I want you to know that Katrina came here in January, the first Sunday in January, 2007, and hasn't stopped since then. You are so much a part of my life. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too. Thank you. Okay. Oh, yeah, she came here as a child. Anyway. Well, first of all, let me say that Vicky's not with me, for those who've asked, and she couldn't be here this morning because we were in Charleston for the month of December, where I'm working, and so we had a great time. We were staying with this fellow who we are renting a room from, and she just talked with this fellow. They got to talking. He's 86 years old. You would think he was about 75. And they just chatted every morning for 3 hours about all kinds of things. And then they'd go out to the gym, and then they'd go out, you know, to Charleston and do something. Of course, I was working at the time. Oh, I know. And anyway, what happened was she just had a great time. So now she's backlogged with the work that she's doing, which is in spiritual direction. So I just wanted to mention that. She wanted to send her love to each and every one of you. The other thing I wanted to share with you was about a young woman, I consider young, in her 40s, who had a very mild heart attack. Now, I didn't know there was such a thing as a mild heart attack, but she had a mild heart attack, what the doctors called it. And she was in the hospital for a few days, and everything was really great. And they said, you know, you can go home anytime you want to. And she said, well, I got to tell you, I had a dream. And I actually had an out-of-body experience. And God told me how long I was going to live, because my question was, am I going to die? And God said, no, you got another 43 years to live. So she said to the doctor, now knowing that, I would like to get a tummy tuck, a liposuction. I'd like to get my eyes redone. I really, you know, everything, contact lenses, everything. I just really want to get it done. So they did all that, and after she finished that, which took about a week, after she finished that, she then went to the beauty parlor in the hospital and had her hair colored and restyled. And I mean, she looked like a knockout, okay? She came out of the hospital and she walked across the street and a bus ran over her. That's supposed to be sad. But anyway, a bus ran over her. And she got to heaven and she was indignant. She said, God, I want to know what happened. You gave me 43 years more to live. And he said, I'm really sorry I didn't recognize you. So, this morning, as you can tell by that spiritual, that I'm inviting you to wade in the water. And what I mean by that is that when in that spiritual, and you know, when the slaves of that day and time got away, ran away, they would wade in the water. And wading in the water would carry them into freedom, is the way I interpret that message. And so what you and I can do is wade in the water and experience that freedom. So what does it mean to wade in the water? Next slide, please. I don't have a clicker. There we go. Okay. So what is the metaphysical meaning of water? Well, water has a negative meaning, actually, metaphysically, and a positive meaning. When you go against the flow, that's the negative meaning of water. And so often in life, we go against the flow. We work against ourselves. But when you go with the flow, now you are wading in the water. You are in control of your life. You have an opportunity to see life in a more glorious and wonderful way, to experience it in such a way that you're really glad to be alive. Now, I've had a long time in this world, and I still have a pretty good memory, and I know that at times I was wading in the water against the water. And then I'd even try to swim against the water. I didn't go with the flow. It wasn't until I came into Unity in 1996 that I started to learn to go with the flow. And it made a huge difference in my life and in the life of my family and in my marriage with Vicki. It really was a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened to us. Water carries a profound spiritual meaning. And it's often thought of cleansing. We cleanse ourselves. It's thought of a form of renewal. You know how you feel after you get a good shower? Really renewed and clean, hopefully. And it also represents rebirth. Being born again within oneself, understanding that the Christ within is who you are, that you are a spiritual being having this spiritual experience, as some of you have heard me say many times, in the human condition. And as we experience life that way, you see, we see ourselves as spiritual beings, we have a whole different perspective on what life is all about. We are able to really get into the water and to move in the water. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount takes place in Matthew and in Luke, the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. And Jesus' main message after the Beatitudes was that there's a practical and progressive way to interpret what was then Judaism, the understanding of Judaism, the way it was taught. And so I believe he did it for us, and he did it for the Jewish people, and that you and I have the opportunity to be positive, progressive, and to understand this message at a heart level, to carry it with us day to day, to allow us to understand who and what we are, so that we show up in life because we're wading in the water, and we are wading in the water in such a way that we're able to understand life a little better. Here's some of the suggestions that Jesus made in the Sermon on the Mount. Next one, please. Thank you. We are being called to be the light of the world. You may remember that passage, some of you. And in it, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Because you see, what we do is we personify what it is we believe. We actually shine with that. Soon after I came into Unity, about 6 months after I was in Unity, I was starting, kind of getting into it a lot, matter of fact. And a good Jewish friend of mine called me and said, Richard, I want to talk to you. We had worked together before I went into the church. And we had lunch together. And he said, I want you to tell me what happened to you. You are a changed person. I had never said anything to him about what I was experiencing, but I was a changed person. And I was beginning to see life differently and see myself differently. And I'm not bragging about that. I'm just simply saying it happens when you go with the flow. It happens when you let the Christ shine within you and then shine out to the world. You can't help but to be the light of the world, each and every one of us. So each and every one of you are the light in the world. Then Jesus said, we are being called to manage, control, and release our anger. Wow. To control, manage, and release our anger. There really is no reason for anger except that it is a form of justification, self-justification. Somebody did something wrong to me, so I can be angry with them. But that's not what Jesus said do. He had some other instructions on that, which I'll mention in a few minutes. Instead, what we are able to do is to bite our tongues sometimes, if you would. You know what that's like. It's hard, isn't it? And yet, more importantly, we need to make sure we don't feel angry. Now, it does happen for all of us. Well, I know of one exception. I won't mention that person. But for most of us, it happens. And what happens is that we are seeing a situation from our perception. We're not seeing it based on how the other person is showing up. We are, in essence, saying that this other person is showing up in such a way that it harms me. So I have a right, I'm justified in being angry. I would say to you that Jesus taught there was no room for anger in our lives, that it gets in the way. And the only person it hurts is each of us individually, the one who's angry. I met a guy one time and said, you know, I talked to a friend of mine I was really angry with. And I told him finally that I was angry with him. And he said, really? What happened? So I explained. He said, oh, I was joking. I'm sorry. You see, this fellow for several years had been holding this anger in. So who was hurting? The guy who made a mistake by what he said, or the guy who held the anger? Certainly. And anger is not healthy, by the way. We know that. Anger creates disease, it creates discomfort, and it creates mental discord is a great word. Thank you, Stephen. Discord. And so as we understand that, we can release that anger and live in a way where we see from others, and what we really see is the Christ in them. We look through the stuff, and we see the Christ within. And the closer you are to a person, the more difficult that can be at times. So just remind yourself that if you start to get angry, what I really want to see is the Christ in that person. And I want to love them unconditionally. The next thing Jesus said is that we are being called to forgive and make amends. When Jesus was talking about forgiveness one time, Peter said to Jesus, how many times should I forgive, Master? 7 times? Is that enough? And Jesus said, no, you forgive 70 times 7. And what that is metaphysically is forever and ever and ever. You're always forgiving. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I've gotten upset about something, and I say, please forgive me, to myself, to the cells in my body, in the moment, I say, okay, I got it. And then something happens that reminds me of that situation, and all of a sudden, I find myself being resentful. And so I go, oh, and I forgive. Now, if I do that enough and often enough, one day, when that situation comes up, what will happen is I will then not feel any need to forgive. It's over with. It has no effect on me. It doesn't affect me emotionally. Because what I have done is finally gotten to the point where I understand that what I needed to forgive was based on my perception, not what really happened. And as I start to understand that, I understand myself more fully. And then Jesus also said that we are called to be non-violent. Today especially, throughout the world, you and I are called to be nonviolent. Martin Luther King understood what that was, to be nonviolent. Gandhi understood what that was, to be nonviolent. It was not to go within oneself to shrink up. Instead, it was to demonstrate in a positive way without being angry at the other person or without being violent in your demonstration. There are, looking around, I know a number of you who remember the 60s and remember nonviolent demonstrations. And it worked. It worked. Oh, we've got a lot more work to do, but it did work. It started a movement. It continues to grow today, where we can be brothers and sisters, as Martin Luther King said, where black children and white children can play together. And we see that today. When I was a kid, I didn't see that very often. But today, it's not unusual. So it is growing. Good things are happening. But we have to be patient, and we also have to understand that nonviolence creates in us an understanding of how to show up. And we are called to love our enemies. We really shouldn't have any enemies. We really don't have any enemies. Because everybody's here to teach us a lesson. That's why we're in relationships, to learn, to grow, to understand ourselves and to understand other people, but more importantly, to understand ourselves. And when we are able to do that, you see, we are able to not be violent in what we do and what we say. We are able to use our words to shine light, to shine honesty, to be in truth. And we must understand that there is no way that being violent creates anything but violence. That's what many of our great leaders have understood. That's certainly what Jesus understood. Love your enemies as you love yourself. I like to say, love your enemies as they need loving. And of course, to be nonviolent, we have to love ourselves also. That's where it all starts. Going within and loving myself just as I am. What I might consider imperfect in myself, love it. Embrace myself. Step into that Christ understanding. Be who you are called to be, what you are called to be. And when you do that, you will then understand that you can love your enemy. And then the next couple slides, please. And then our next one, please. Okay, we're called to believe in good. What I want to do is share a story with you this morning about good. Seeing things from a good perspective when it's difficult. Don was a man who had a son named Joey. Don was Jewish. He had been the survivor of 3 concentration camps, the only survivor in his family. And he vowed and declared that he would continue to be faithful to his faith and to train his children, but he only had one, the son, to be faithful in that faith. And his son named Joey came to his dad when he was about 19 years old and said, "Dad, I just dropped out of college. I've decided I want to go to India. And I want to study there, and I want to travel. I want to learn more about Hinduism and Buddhism. I think maybe there's a lot to learn about that would help us." And his dad said, "Well, son, that's great. I support you in that. I'll give you some money to help you do that, but I want you to get your education at some point." And his son said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but I want to go to India. And by the way, Dad," and his dad was patient to this point, "by the way, Dad, I don't want to be Jewish anymore." Wow. His dad lost it. "I disown you. I don't want anything to do with you. I think that you are, an affront to everything I believe in. Who do you think you are? I'm not going to give you any money to go to India. Get out of my house. Joy yelled back, well, you're not a very good example. And they got into this little battle, and they left each other in that conflict. Joy went to India, and he met Sarah while he was in India, a student abroad. They fell in love, and they were engaged, and they traveled around India, looking for insight and enlightenment. And then he got a message from a friend of his saying, I don't know if you know it or not, but your dad has passed away. And it was about a year after his dad had passed away because nobody could reach him. And what had happened is his dad had had a severe heart attack and died. And Joy immediately wanted to be forgiven by his dad, but he felt like that was impossible. And he also felt that he had created the heart attack, that he had killed his dad. And he was carrying that with him. And he said to Sarah, I don't know why, but I need to go to Israel. I need to go to the Wailing Wall. I've got to resolve this. And as he traveled in Israel towards the Wailing Wall, what happened is he got more and more interested in his faith as a Jew. And when he got there, it bothered Sarah because she had also given up Judaism. And so the two of them were clashing now, not getting along very well. And Sarah said, I put up with this as long as I can. I'm sorry, I cannot do this anymore. You are not the person that I have been living with and not the person I've been traveling with. And so she left him. But he was determined to move forward. And so he got to the Wailing Wall. And when he got to the Wailing Wall, he asked, how do I put a note in the wall? And there's a guide there who told him that he had to really look around for a crevice because it's really hard to find one where there's not already a note. And he finally found a crevice. And he didn't think there was any note in there. And he wrote a note to his father saying, please forgive me. If you are any way connected, if we are in any way connected in consciousness, please, please forgive me. I am so sorry that I did not see you and that I did not honor you. He put his note, folded it, and put it in the crevice. When he put it in a crevice, and by the way, this is a true story. When he put it in a crevice, a note fell out of the crevice. And he picked it up, and he read the note, and it said, Dear Joy, I want you to know that I've loved you all your life. I want you to know that I'll never stop loving you. And I want you to forgive me for my anger. Joy was astounded and started to cry, pretty much uncontrollably. And a rabbi priest who serves at the wall came over. And he told him what happened. And he said, what I'd like to do is invite you to my house tonight for dinner. I think you need a friend right now. And so Joy went to his house. When Joy walked in the house and sat down at a table, in walked Sarah. And they had missed each other, and they still loved each other. And Sarah said, Joy, while I've been here in Israel, I have come back to my Jewish heritage. I have learned some things about myself. I just want you to know that. And eventually, they got married. That's Joy's story. It's so many people today who live in circumstances where they can't go back and say, I forgive you. There are times when we might feel separated from a loved one or a child. There are times when we feel lost because of that. But if we have the faith, if we continue to search for a way, if we're willing to let go and let God, then what can happen is that we can wade in the water together. Now, let's prepare for our Jerusalem stone ceremony. And each of you should have, and if anybody doesn't, please raise your hands. We have them. If you need a stone, please do that, and a pencil. Don't write with ink, write with a pencil. Doesn't make it any more sacred, it just works better. So anyway, and I invite you to hold this stone in your hand as we work through the ceremony together. In Jesus' time, when you went to jail and you were released from jail, you received a stone, a Jerusalem stone, and you would write on it a new name. And what would happen is that as you showed the stone to people, they knew, yes, you'd been in prison, but that you had started anew, that you had a new name that you wanted to live up to. It isn't like Layla's Rob, where you get a new name but nobody honors it. In this case, in Jesus' time, they honored it. And people were like forgiven. And they carried it around with them. Well, in Revelation, I think it's 21:7, it talks about being blessed to be able to have a new name. A name that means something to you from a spiritual perspective. A name that you can carry into 2025. Now, there are a lot of names. One of the 12 powers, faith or strength, courage, love, power itself. Any of those things, any of those words work beautifully. And that's how I'm going to show up. One year I put, I am going to do it. My new name is Do It. Because I am one of the great procrastinators in life. If you want to learn how to procrastinate, I can teach you. And I decided that year that I was going to give up procrastination. I did sometimes. And I'm much better today. Because at my age, you just don't know how much time you have. And so, you don't want to procrastinate, okay? And, but just so it can be as simple, it can be as silly, it can be as meaningful if it means something to you. And you can write that name down. So what I want us to do is go through a meditation right now, after which you will write down that name on this stone. Then what you do, you write it down in pencil, then you take the stone home with you, and you put some water on top of it, and that will make the lead stick in the stone. I still have stones on my desk in my office from years ago. And so it will last a very, very long time. So now let's just take this opportunity to hold this stone, maybe rub your thumbs over it, and as you do, come to understand that you and this stone, through the power of Spirit, are one. I invite you to take a journey this morning. See yourself on a path, moving through a beautiful, beautiful stand of pine trees. And as you walk along the path, you come out of the sunlight into the shadows of the path. And you journey on this path in awe of the beauty around you. And as you appreciate that beauty, you begin to think about, who am I? What am I? How am I showing up? How do I want to show up? What are my intentions in 2025? And then you all of a sudden find yourself in a clearing, in a meadow. In the middle of the meadow there is a bench. See yourself approaching that bench. See yourself sitting down on that bench and asking yourself the question, who am I? What would I want to be called in 2025? What name will I write down on this precious, precious stone that I am holding in my hand? And now gently open your eyes and write the name that comes to you on the stone, but you're still sitting on the bench. Know that Spirit is moving in you in this very moment. We are all in oneness as we support each and every one of ourselves. Support ourselves with love, with light, with peace, with joy. And we continue to write down the name that comes to our mind for 2025. And now we hold the stone in our hand, and we see ourselves leaving the bench and beautifully moving across the meadow, back to the path. It's in this path that we feel safe, we feel comfortable, we feel God moving in us, as us. It's on this path that we declare our new name. Hold it to our hearts and say, yes, yes, this is who I am. This is who I am. And as we come out back into the sunlight, we just say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I am, and say the name. I am, and say the name. I am that I am. I am because thou art, and thou art because I am. And so I feel complete. I feel relaxed. I feel enthusiastic as I look forward to 2025. And so it is. Namaste. Have a great 2025. Thank you.
Now, if our ushers will come forward. Ushers? Yes, thank you. Alrighty. Together we will do our prosperity blessing. Divine love flows from me as a spirit of generosity. I know that as I give generously, I enter the flow of abundance. Every good possibility comes into view as I swim in the stream of infinite good. I am the harmony of divine love, blessed and overflowing.
This step is once again our first. We set our feet upon a virgin land. We hold the promise of the earth in our hands. No flood from heaven and purify. We hold the fate of man and men in our hands. Now at this dawn so green and glad, we pray that we may long remember how lovely was the world we had in the of all the gifts we have received, one is most precious and most terrible. The will in each of us is free. It's in our hands. And if someday we hear a voice, if he should speak again, our silent Father, all he will tell us is the choice is in our hands. Our hands can choose to drop the knife. Our hearts can choose to stop the hating. For every moment of our life is a beginning. There is no journey gone so far we cannot stop and change direction. No doom is written in the stars. It's in our hands. We cannot know what will occur. Just make our journey worth the taking, and pray we're wiser than we were. In the beginning, it's the beginning. Thank you, beloveds. Thank you.
Ushers are coming back, and we can bless these amazing gifts together. We give thanks for the gifts that will support our mission of creating a spiritually awakened world. Awesome. Thank you, ushers. So yes, it is the time for thank yous, as we did not have any youth today, unfortunately. So thank you, ushers, Armand and Carol. Thank you, AV, Natasha, Lynn, and I can't tell if there's a third person, but wow, they're doing it with 2 people. Even more thanks. Awesome. And thank you to our band and Katrina and her 18 years. Woo! So that's Ian, Ryan, and Forrest to give their names to. And thank you, Reverend Richard, for coming back. Thank you for the jokes and for the message and all the things and leading us through that amazing Whitestone ceremony. We'll have you back anytime. And thank you to our teachers that show up even if we don't have children. So thank you. They prepare lessons and are ready when we are able to impact those young folks. And thank you for Debbie and everybody else that's helping, de-Christmas, clean up, keep us straight, and especially with all the germs that are going around right now. So I think that's everybody, but and thank you for letting me practice like I do when I come up here. All right, so the next step is prayer of protection and then our closing song, and we're going out. So together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth,
the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joy.